It was a quiet afternoon in a small rural town, the kind of place where people usually wave as they drive by, and most roads are nearly empty. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the street. A few cars passed here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then came the rumble of an old motorcycle, loud, steady, like it had something to prove. It wasn't shiny or new. It was a rusty, heavy-looking Harley from a different time. Riding it was an elderly man, probably in his 80s. He sat straight, focused, his hands steady on the handlebars. There was no rush in the way he moved, no fear, just calm. But the moment he stopped at a red light near the gas station, flashing blue lights lit up behind him. A police cruiser pulled up fast, a little too eager. From the front seat, Officer Ava Johnson stepped out. Young, sharp uniform, mirrored sunglasses. She looked over at the old man with a smirk and said, "Is this a joke?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it was the kind that poked. The kind that didn't expect to be questioned. The man didn't flinch. He didn't look back. He just stayed on the bike, eyes fixed ahead. His hands didn't move. A second officer, David Lopez, got out and stood nearby. The two exchanged quick glances, annoyed, maybe even a little confused. Johnson stepped closer. "License and registration," she said firmly. "Step off the bike." There was tension now, quiet but sharp. It wasn't just about traffic laws. Something felt off. The balance of power was uneven, and the old man wasn't reacting the way they expected. And that's when the story really began. His name is James Harris. He's 82 years old and lives alone on a small farm about 10 miles outside of town. Every morning, without fail, he's up by 5. Not because he has to, but because that's what he's always done. His days start with a quiet cup of coffee. Then he gets to work. The land isn't big, but it keeps him busy, just enough to keep his hands moving and his mind sharp. Yesterday, his old tractor broke down. Something with the hydraulics. But James didn't panic. He walked into his garage, found the right tools, and got to work. After all, he's been fixing things longer than most people have been alive. Tucked in that same garage, under a faded tarp, sits a 1970 Harley Davidson. It's old, rough around the edges, and louder than it needs to be. But it still runs strong. That's what matters to James. He doesn't care about shiny paint or chrome, only that it gets him where he's going. And at his age, he still rides better than most guys in their 20s. His movements are quick, eyes always watching, like he's measuring the world 1 second at a time. That comes from years of military training, years that never really leave a person. But to someone passing by, all they see is an old man on a noisy bike. They don't see the early mornings, the quiet discipline, or the life he's lived. They don't know about the long nights overseas, the medals in the drawer, or the names of soldiers who still call him Sir. To the world, he looks like someone who should be slowing down. But James Harris never believed in slowing down. Not then. Not now. Back at the intersection, the air had changed. What started as a simple stop was turning into something more. Officer Johnson's hand now rested on her holstered weapon, not in fear, but in frustration. She stared at James like she couldn't figure him out. "You're too old to be riding this thing," she said, glancing at the rusted Harley like it was part of the problem. "You could hurt yourself, or someone else." James still didn't speak. He just stood there beside his bike, hands relaxed behind his back, eyes steady. Officer Lopez stepped in, circling the bike slowly. Without asking, they started checking his pockets, patting him down. The kind of search that wasn't really needed. But they did it anyway. Across the street, a few people had stopped to watch. A man with a grocery bag, a teenager on a skateboard, a mom with her little boy. Whispers started. Some people looked worried. Others just looked confused. Officer Johnson kept going. "Do you live alone? Anyone checking in on you?" she asked, her voice sharp but not yelling. "You confused, sir? Do you know where you are?" Harris didn't blink, didn't move. Just stood there, calm and quiet. That calm only made her more irritated. "You're not listening," she snapped. "We might have to take you in. You need a medical check, maybe a psych evaluation." Now the crowd was whispering louder. A few phones were up, recording. It was clear something wasn't right. Not with Harris, but with how this whole thing was unfolding. But the officers were too far in to stop now. And James? He had seen much worse than this, and waited through much longer silences. So he just stood, still and steady, like time itself didn't bother him. Across the street, behind the gas pumps, Marcus Williams stood frozen. He had been wiping down the fuel handle when he noticed the flashing lights and raised voices. At first, he thought it was just a traffic stop, but then he saw who was being stopped, and his stomach dropped. That was James Harris. He'd known him for over 15 years. James came by every week to fill up his tank, always on time, always polite, never asked for anything extra. Just a quiet nod, a calm, "Thank you," and then off he'd go. Marcus wasn't just a gas station owner. He was a Gulf War veteran, 58 years old, and he knew respect when he saw it, and disrespect when it happened right in front of him. Watching Harris get searched like a criminal made his blood boil. That man wasn't confused. That man had more discipline in his little finger than most people had in their whole body. Without thinking twice, Marcus walked inside and picked up the phone. He called Fort Carson, the nearest military base. "This is Marcus Williams," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "There's a situation here. An old veteran's being humiliated by local police. His name is James Harris." There was a pause on the line. Then the officer on the other end spoke with sudden urgency. "Did you say James Harris? Hold the line." That was the moment everything started to change. The moment when help was set in motion, and nobody at that street corner had any idea what was coming. Things were heating up fast. Officer Johnson had lost her patience. Her voice was louder now, sharper. "Mr. Harris, get in the vehicle. We're taking you for an evaluation." She wasn't asking anymore. It was a command. But Harris didn't budge. He looked at her calmly, almost like he'd seen this kind of pressure before, and it didn't scare him one bit. "I'm not going," he said, voice steady, low. Johnson stiffened. "Then I'll use force if I have to." It was a risky move. There was no real reason to take him in. No law had been broken. The crowd watching from the sidewalk was larger now, and the murmurs were growing louder. Some people looked angry. Others pulled out their phones, already filming. The balance of power was shifting, and the officers could feel it. Then something strange happened. A sound in the distance, deep, heavy, and growing fast. Engines. Big ones. Dust kicked up far down the road as a convoy of vehicles came into view. Within seconds, 12 Humvees rolled into the scene like something out of a movie. They moved fast but clean, forming a perfect semicircle around the police and the old Harley. Doors opened, and 50 soldiers stepped out in full gear. No shouting, no chaos. Just quiet, organized movement. Then one man broke away from the formation. He walked straight toward Harris, stopping just a few feet in front of him. His voice was clear. "Colonel Harris," he said, standing tall as he snapped a sharp salute. Everything stopped. Johnson froze. Lopez stared. The crowd went dead silent. Not even the wind seemed to move. Phones were up, but no one said a word. The story had just flipped, and no one was ready for what came next. The captain stood firm, eyes locked on the officers who had just tried to order Harris into their cruiser. His voice was steady, but there was weight behind every word. "This man you stopped," he said, pointing gently to Harris, "served in 3 wars, Vietnam, the Gulf, and Afghanistan. He carried out missions that don't make it into the news. He trained hundreds of soldiers, including me." His voice tightened slightly. "He holds 2 bronze stars, 2 Purple Hearts with oak leaf clusters, and the Distinguished Service Cross. He is one of the most respected men to ever wear this country's uniform." Johnson's face dropped. Lopez looked down, unsure of what to do. The crowd that once looked confused or amused now stood in full silence. Some had tears in their eyes. Others lowered their phones. You could feel the shame hanging in the air. Officer Johnson stepped forward, voice quiet now. "Sir, Colonel Harris, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Harris looked at her with the same calm he had shown all day. "That's the problem," he said gently. "People look, but they don't see. Never judge someone by how they look. You don't know the battles they've fought. You don't know what they've carried home." The captain didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The truth had already done its work. Later that day, the phone rang at the local police station. Sheriff Smith picked up, already guessing who it might be. On the other end was the captain from the base. His voice was calm but serious. "We're not here for revenge," he said. "Colonel Harris doesn't want anyone punished, but we can't ignore what happened. We'd like your officers to come to the base. Learn what service really means. Learn what respect looks like." Sheriff Smith paused. He knew this wasn't just about one bad decision. It was bigger than that. "We'll do it," he said. "All of them will go." A few days later, Officer Johnson stood in front of her team during an emergency meeting. Her voice wasn't as strong as usual. "Last week," she began, "I made a mistake. I didn't see a man. I saw a number, an old bike, a wrinkled face. I thought I knew everything I needed in a few seconds." She looked around the room. "But I didn't. What I've learned is simple. Ask before assuming. Listen before judging. Every person we stop carries something we can't see." She sat down quietly, and for once, no one had anything to say. A few days passed. Then one morning, Officer Johnson drove out along Highway 340, heading toward a small farmhouse just off the road. It was a quiet place, white wood siding, a porch with 2 rocking chairs, a garden full of flowers, and a green tractor parked near the barn. In the shade of a large tree sat the same old Harley, still dusty, still strong. She parked, stepped out, and spotted Harris lying under the tractor, working on something. He slid out slowly, wiped his hands on a rag, and looked up. "Officer Johnson?" he said. "Can I help you?" She nodded. "I just came to talk, if that's okay." "Coffee's fresh," he said, walking toward the house. Inside the kitchen, they sat at a worn table, sipping from plain blue mugs. Harris looked across at her. "Why'd you become a police officer?" he asked. She thought for a second. "I wanted to help people. I wanted to make things better." He nodded. "Then always remember this," he said. "Respect isn't something you wear on your chest or carry on your belt. It's how you treat people. All people." He glanced out the window toward the Harley. "It still rides," he said. "Still has roads to travel." He looked at her again. "Same goes for all of us. Every person you see has lived through something you'll never fully understand. Some carry medals in drawers. Others carry memories that don't let them sleep. A scar doesn't always show on the skin. Sometimes it's in the way someone walks, the way they stay quiet, or the way they hold on to something old that still works. So don't rush to judge. That quiet man, that rusty bike, they both still have miles left in them.